Shalom Akim. First and foremost, all praises and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Just like the title suggested, this is exposing bullshit concerning the civil rights movement and Black Lives Matter. So we're going to get right into it. What was the real purpose of the civil rights movement? And yeah, in the upper left hand corner you'll see scriptures there that I'll be putting to basically go along with this lesson that I'm doing. As you read the article, which I got this information from Wikipedia, it says to end racial segregation and discrimination. That was the goal of the civil rights movement. Now also with this civil rights movement, one of its major supporters was the Jewish community, the ones that say they are Jews and they are not. Now you got to ask yourself, why would they support the civil rights movement? They don't even like so-called black people, so why would they support it? Also, you should also know that there's one case that pretty much ended segregation for the most part. The case is known as Brown versus the Board of Education. And if you read the article that's below, it basically tells you that the NAACP was the major factor in ending segregation. And the president of the NAACP at that time was Moorfield Story. And he's from England, and he's most likely a Jew as well. So you should have questions about those things. But anyway, in the article, it says that the Negroes were suffering from a lack of education. Now, we're going to take a look in history, roughly 20 years before the civil rights movement, and see if that's true. Now, I'm going to read several articles, including Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, aka Greenwood, East St. Louis Massacre, the Rosewood Massacre, the Massacre of Tennessee, and also the massacre in Washington, D.C. all happened around the 1920s. Okay, I'm going to start off with the Washington, D.C. Massacre. Post-war D.C., roughly 75% Edomite was a racial tinderbox. Housing was in short supply and jobs so scarce that ex-doughboys in uniform panhandled along Pennsylvania Avenue. However, Washington's Israelite community was then the largest and most prosperous in the country, with a small but impressive upper class of teachers, ministers, lawyers, and businessmen concentrated in the LeDroit Park neighborhood near Howard University. By the time that Red Summer was underway, unemployment of Edomites bitterly envied the relatively few Israelites who were fortunate enough to procure low-level government jobs. Many Edomites also resented the influx of Israelites into previously segregated neighborhoods around Capitol Hill, Foggy Bottom, and the old downtown. In July 1919, Edomite men, many military Edomite men, responded to the rumored arrest of Israelite men for rape with 4 days of mob violence. They rioted, randomly beat up Israelites on the street, and pulled others off streetcars in attacks. When police refused to intervene, the Israelite population fought back. Troops tried to restore order as the city closed saloons, theaters, and discouraged assemblies. When the violence ended, 15 had died, 10 Edomites, including 2 police officers, and 5 Israelites. 50 people were seriously wounded and another 100 less severely wounded. It was one of the few times when Edomite fatalities outnumbered Israelite fatalities. And you gotta understand that, hey, These Edomites were envious because Jake had a better economy than them, and that's one of the reasons the civil rights movement had to happen. That's why it was spearheaded by the so-called Jews. Moving on to the next one. This is the account of the East St. Louis Massacre. During spring 1917, Israelites were arriving in St. Louis at the rate of 2,000 per week, with many of them finding work at the Aluminum Ore Company and the American Steel Company in East St. Louis. Some Edomites feared loss of job and wage security because of the new competition, and further resented newcomers arriving from rural, very different culture. Tensions between the groups ran high and escalated when rumors spread about an Israelite man and a Edomite woman socializing at a labor meeting. In May, 3,000 Edomites gathered in downtown East St. Louis. The roving mob began burning buildings, attacking Israelites. The Illinois governor called the National Guard to prevent further rioting, and conditions eased somewhat for a few weeks. Then on July 1st, Edomite men driving a car through a Israelite neighborhood began shooting into houses and stores and church. A group of Israelite men organized themselves to defend against the attackers. As they gathered, they mistook an approaching car for the same one that had earlier driven through the neighborhood, and they shot and killed 2 men in the car, who were in fact police detectives sent to calm the situation. The shooting of the detectives incensed the growing crowd of Edomite spectators who came the next day to examine the car. The crowd grew and it turned into a mob that spent the day and the following night on a spree of violence targeting Israelite neighborhoods in East St. Louis. Again, guardsmen were called. By various accounts suggest that they joined the attacking of Israelite people rather than stopping the violence. After the riot, various estimations of the death toll circulated. The police chief estimated that 100 Israelites had been killed. Renowned journalist Ida B. Wells reported in the Chicago Defender that 40 to 150 Israelites were killed in the rioting. NAACP estimated the deaths between 100 and 200. 6,000 Israelites were left homeless after the neighborhood was burned. After reading this story, if you have any sense, you know good and damn well these Edomites did not send the National Guard there to help. They never have helped us. They never wanted to help us, and they never will help us. You can see that going on today. That's just like saying the police went to de-escalate the situation with Tamir Rice, and then he pulled out a gun and they had to put him down. You know, fuck on. At that time they were rearing to go to murder Israelites, to murder you so-called black people. So you gotta kind of take it with a grain of salt and understand that this is a devil that wrote this article, so he didn't tell the 100% truth. He wanted to make his people look kind of good, you know. But moving on to the next article. Knoxville, Tennessee. In August 1919, a race riot in Knoxville, Tennessee broke out after an Edomite mob mobilized in response to an Israelite man accused of murdering an Edomite woman. The 5,000-strong mob stormed the county jail searching for the prisoner. They freed 16 Edomite prisoners, including suspected murderers. After looting the jail and the sheriff's house, the mob moved on and attacked the Israelite business district. Many of the city's Israelite residents, aware of the race riots that had occurred across the county over that summer, had armed themselves and barricaded the intersection of Vine and Central to defend their businesses. 2 platoons of Tennessee National Guard's 4th Infantry, led by Adjutant General Edward Sweeney, arrived, but they were unable to halt the chaos. They were unable to halt the chaos because they were part of the chaos. The National Guard did not come to help. They came to help the Edomite mob that was taking over, that was burning down the businesses and taking over the Israelite business district. Anyway, moving on. The mob broke into stores and stole firearms and other weapons on their way to the Israelite business district. Upon their arrival, the streets erupted in gunfire as Israelite snipers exchanged fire with both the rioters and soldiers. The Tennessee National Guard at one point fired two machine guns indiscriminately into the neighborhood, eventually dispersing the rioters. Shooting continued sporadically for several hours. Outgunned, the Israelite defenders gradually fled, allowing the guardsmen to gain control of the area because they were fighting alongside of the mob. Newspapers placed the death toll to just two, though eyewitness accounts suggested the dead were so many that the bodies were dumped into the Tennessee River, while others were buried in mass graves outside the city. So, like I said, there's a devil that actually wrote this article trying to make his people look good, but they're all the devil. But, and I got two more articles to read, but this shows you how the devil operates. And yes, I'm going to read these two articles just so you can get it in your head that these Edomites hate you, and the civil rights movement was not for your benefit. It was because our people were doing too good in this land. But just like the scriptures say, this is not our rest. Okay, this is the Rosewood Massacre in 1923. Rosewood was a quiet, self-sufficient whistle stop on the Seaboard Airline Railway in Florida. By the 1900s, the population in Rosewood had become predominantly Israelite. Some people farmed or worked in local businesses, including the sawmill in nearby Sumner, a predominantly Edomite town. In 1920, Rosewood Israelites had three churches, a school, a large Masonic hall, turpentine mill, a sugarcane mill, a baseball team, and a general store. A second one was Edomite owned. The village had about 24 plank two-story homes, some other small houses, and as well as several small unoccupied plank structures. Spurred by unsupported accusations that an Edomite woman in Sumner had been beaten and possibly raped by an Israelite drifter, Edomite men from a number of nearby towns lynched a Rosewood resident. When Israelite citizens defended themselves against further attack, several hundred Edomites combed the countryside hunting Israelite people and burning almost every structure in Rosewood. Survivors hid for several days in nearby swamps and evacuated by train and car to larger towns. Although state and local authorities were aware of the violence, they made no arrests for the activities in Rosewood. At least 6 Israelites and 2 Edomites were killed, and the town was abandoned by Israelite residents during the attacks. None ever returned. And I know a lot of you brothers already know this, but there is actually a movie based on what happened in Rosewood. And if you haven't seen it, I do recommend that you see it. And there's one more article I'm going to read, so bear with me while I get to it. And this is Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma, aka Black Wall Street, during about 1921. During the oil boom in the 1910s, the area of northeast Oklahoma around Tulsa flourished, including the Greenwood neighborhood, which came to be known as Black Wall Street. The area was home to several lawyers, realtors, doctors, and prominent Israelite businessmen, many of them multi-millionaires. Greenwood boasted a variety of thriving businesses such as grocery stores, clothing stores, barbershops, banks, hotels, cafes, movie theaters, 2 newspapers, and many contemporary homes. Greenwood residents enjoyed many luxuries that their Edomite neighbors did not, including indoor plumbing and a remarkable school system. The dollar circulated 36 to 100 times, sometimes taking a year for currency to leave the community. The neighborhood was destroyed during a riot that broke out after a group of men from Greenwood attempted to protect a young Israelite man from a lynch mob. On the night of May 31st, 1921, a mob called for the lynching of Dick Rowland, an Israelite man who shined shoes after reports spread that on the previous day he had assaulted Sarah Page, an Edomite woman, in the elevator she operated in a downtown building. In the early morning hours of June 1st, 1921, Tulsa was looted, firebombed from the air, and burned down by Edomite rioters. The governor declared martial law and National Guard troops arrived in Tulsa. Guardsmen assisted firemen in putting out the fires, removed abducted Israelites from the hands of Edomite vigilantes, and imprisoned all Israelite Tulsans. Now, when the National Guard actually came in, they were the ones who were firebombing Tulsa from the air. Tulsa had millionaires. Tulsa was one of the several economies, which I read another one, which was Washington, D.C., one of the several economies that were thriving on their own with just the Israelite population. So they came in with the National Guard and actually bombed Tulsa, Oklahoma. They did not help. They were not there to save Israelites. They were there to destroy the economy because the economies were taking over America. Israelite economies were taking over America. Just like it said, the dollar circulated 36 to 100 times, and it took a year sometimes for money to even get into Edomites' hands from the community. Reading on. And they imprisoned all Israelite Tulsans, not already confined, into a prison camp at a conventional hall in the fairgrounds, some for as long as 8 days. In the wake of the violence, 35 city blocks lay charred to ruins. Over 800 Israelites were treated for injuries, and estimated 300 deaths occurred. Now, in the previous articles I was reading, it said that Israelites were suffering from a lack of education, but it seems to me that Israelites were fine not dealing with Edomites. Being segregated was the best thing that happened to you Israelite men, you so-called black people. I mean, we had economies thriving better than the whole economy of the Esau in America. And we had our own school systems. We educated ourselves. Edomites seemed like they were the ones who needed the help. We didn't need the help. So we didn't need any civil rights. We just needed them to leave us the hell alone. However, they didn't do that, knowing that if they would have left us alone, we would have taken over America, not by violence, but by just because of our spirit. So now, and I also wanted to mention concerning Tulsa, Oklahoma, there's a documentary about what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma as well. If you brothers haven't seen it, I do suggest that you watch it. But watch the old one. There's a newer kind of one, and there's an old one. Watch the older one because it actually tells you more accurate of what happened in the truth, and it was commentary given by the people that actually lived there. And that'll be the end of part one. I'm gonna do a part 2 to this, exposing Black Lives Matter, and giving a comparison between the two. So stay tuned. To the elect, stay strong, and we almost out of here. Shalom.